Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, the space for entrepreneurs on a quest for unwavering certainty and purpose. I'm your host, Lauren, and each episode is a compass guiding you through authentic conversations, unraveling the mysteries of your human design chart, and offering tools from the remarkable guest. Join me as we embark on a journey to manifest greatness and create a life aligned with our deepest purpose. This is the space where misfits find their enlightenment. Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren. In today's episode, I also have Lauren. She is a baby soul communicator. Welcome, Lauren. I'm so happy to have you here with us this morning and talk about all of the goodness that you bring to the show.
Thank you, Lauren. It's really great to be here. Excited to have this conversation as well.
Yes. So kind of tell us a little bit about what you do and a little bit about who you are and, what kind of brought you to this title of a baby soul communicator.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's something that sort of came to me. It chose me. It certainly was not something I was looking for or chasing. I was quite happy for 20 years being a registered nurse, in the science side of life and, all the policies and rules and guidelines and all of these things. That was my world pretty much. And then probably it was 2016, I started having some spiritual experiences with the babies I was caring for because I worked in NICU for most of my career. And I had, again, been very science focused, but I also had a curiosity on the side outside of my nursing career around spirituality. So I studied yoga, meditation, Buddhism, energy healing therapy, and a few other modalities. And yeah, literally in 2016, my worlds collided on a night shift one night. And I started having, these experiences with the babies that I was caring for. And I thought I was going mad. I thought I was crazy because it was, I liked the science world, and I liked my worlds being separate. So I wasn't sure what to do with this information. I was seeing things, feeling things, hearing things. So I just ignored it. And I ignored it for probably a year. And then I thought maybe I should start listening to this because it's not going anywhere. Took time off work here and there, thinking I was just stressed and shift work. But it only intensified and it got, really, really strong for me. So after about a year, I just started listening and I started journaling and writing down the experiences I was having with babies in the nursery and also babies, getting a call from the birth suite saying that there were twins in labor and things like that. And suddenly I would start feeling their energy sort of coming towards me. So on a personal level, it actually really helped me be a better nurse. It helped me be much more holistic in my approach with caring for babies and also understand them on a much deeper level. Because I know certainly in my career, there was this sense that babies, they're a little bit clueless. They don't really know what's going on around them and they don't really remember these things. And there was a lot of that sort of talk amongst my colleagues and my, the environment, I guess, that I was working in. But I learned that they know so much more and understand so much more than what we give them credit for. And so I stopped working as a nurse in 2021, end of 2021, early 22, because the hardest thing about not only being a registered nurse, but having these other experiences is that I couldn't share the information that I was receiving from these babies. And even though it was interesting to me, I couldn't share it with those who needed it most, which was obviously their parents. And so, being in the hospital, it wasn't, I certainly couldn't come out and say any of these things. So after I left the environment, I was then able to share it with the mothers and the parents of these babies, which has been much more fulfilling and much more effective, really, for what they're trying to say and what they're trying to do with that information. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, I guess.
I was gonna say I love your story. When I like when I was like looking up your, all of your like bio and stuff, I was like, oh, I feel like we have some type of connection because it's very your story is very similar to mine. Now, I wasn't a nurse, but I did high risk OB, and I always felt like them in the womb, I could feel their energy. Like
Hmm.
a lot of ultrasound techs were like, oh, this baby's being difficult. And then I would always say, well, just like breathe and try to talk to them, like literally talk to them. And then it's
Hmm.
like they can hear. I mean, obviously they can
Yeah.
hear. So it's like
Yeah.
it was so much easier when I was like, oh, I can just say, hey, baby, move, or like, you need to get a certain picture or whatever, and
Hmm.
they can feel that. They also can feel that you're getting frustrated with them. Like you're bothering them. Like
Yeah.
they're not asking you to take pictures of them. So it's
Absolutely.
interesting that you say that because
Yeah.
I've also started to notice that too. And same thing, very passionate about what I did until I wasn't. And then I was
Yeah.
like, I can't do this anymore. I have to
Yeah.
do something different, because it's like, these moms are worried. Some of them are really sick. Some of these babies are really
Hmm.
sick. So
Hmm.
it's like, hear me bringing my energy, like just not knowing what I want to do with my life. So it was a
Yeah.
huge life-changing experience too. One of my first near-death experiences happened and I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I got to look at my life a little bit different. So I want to kind of
Yeah.
talk about your like near death experience, why you were whitewater rafting in Africa. Can you kind of take us a little bit through that journey if you're open to that and
Yeah.
change your perspective on life and death in this whole path?
Yeah, well, the whole reason I was in Africa is because I couldn't deal with babies dying anymore. That's what it came down to, working in my role as a nurse in NICU. The unfortunate reality is not all babies survived, not all babies went home. And as a nurse, and I started nursing when I was 20, and so I was very young, and so, but I was also faced with really big situations around life and death and the ethics of that as well that I really struggled with. And so all through my 20s and into my early 30s, I started to really ask these questions like why? Like, why do babies die? That was the biggest thing that plagued on my mind for years, probably 12 years. And I got to a point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I was 31 and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, it's just, I had a very strict Christian upbringing, even though I'd moved away from the church and that, but I did blame God, that he wasn't doing a very good job if babies were dying. And so I really struggled with that. And so I decided to take a break from nursing. I hadn't done anything else with my life other than nursing. And so I just, yeah, booked a one-way ticket to Africa. I'd always loved to travel and had traveled, in many countries around the world. And yes, I did a career break and went to Africa to volunteer with the animals. And I did a few different volunteer projects over there, had a great time. It was great fun. I was there for about 7 or 8 months. And towards the end of it, I decided I was doing an overland safari, which I tended to do the traveling between the volunteer projects. And yeah, I went whitewater rafting this day and I just had a funny feeling about it. I'd been whitewater rafting in New Zealand before and it was fun. And so that's why I thought, well, I'll do it in Africa. The opportunity came up. But yeah, I just had this funny, unsettled feeling when I was walking down the ravine, I guess, sort of into the river. And yeah, I'm not sure how long into the trip I was. It's quite blurry now, but I do remember the moment when I fell out of the raft. The raft kind of the nose of the raft went down and the back of the raft went up into the air, and then I fell into the water. I was the only one that did. And it was the last day of the season, which meant that the water was really low, which meant that the rocks were high. And also, when there's less water, it's really tumultuous as well because of the rocks. And yeah, it was interesting. The name of the rapid I fell into was called Stairway to Heaven, which I thought was quite funny in hindsight.
Yeah.
But basically, what happened is when I hit the water, I felt like, and look, I didn't make sense of this until many, many years after because my nursing hat just told me that I was having a panic attack. By this point, I hadn't I'd done a bit of yoga, but I hadn't sort of delved too much into spirituality, didn't know anything about near death experiences or anything like that. But what happened is, yeah, I felt what I can say now happened is that my consciousness split into. There was part of me that was in the water. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know which way was up. I could feel myself being bashed against rocks and God knows what that was in the water. And there was a lot of fear there. There was a lot of physical pain as well as panic because I couldn't breathe. I remember not being able to breathe. But there was this other part of me that was looking down on myself, and I was in a room. It was a dark room. There was nobody else around me. The only thing in the room was a TV screen on the wall. And, I had no idea what that meant, but I started seeing all kinds of scenes from my life. Like I was seeing my nursing job, I was seeing members of my family. I had a young niece at the time. Um, and so there was all these things like literally flashing before me on the wall on the TV. And again, I don't know how long I was looking at this for. Time was just not a thing at during this experience. And what did happen though is I heard a voice that says, it's not your time yet. You need to go back for the children. And again, I didn't see anyone. I didn't know what it was, who it was, where it was coming from, but I could hear it in this room. But and then not long after that, I was rescued by some African guy on a canoe, and like he paddled me to shore, and then the next part of the journey started. But I did not recognize it as a near death experience. One, because I hadn't heard of him and didn't know what it was. Two, it was even a couple of years after the fact when I'd heard more about, I guess I was getting more into spirituality and was learning more about, and hearing about near death experiences. And, I'd heard about like the white light and God and long lost family members and the tunnel of light and all of these things. And again, I never put two and two together because that was not my experience. And it was awful. It was not blissful at all. Even when I was in the room on my own, there was a sense of calmness there, but I wasn't, there was no joy, there was no bliss. It was almost, I felt quite neutral with things. But again, I was very fearful, that part of me that was still in the water. So so yeah, it was only when I went on in my nursing career after my worlds collided that I went on to have three shared death experiences with the babies I was caring for who died. And it was only when I was Googling trying to figure out what on earth was happening that I realized that a lot of people who have shared death experiences also have near death experiences. And I was like, what? No, like, well, I haven't had a near death experience. And then Africa popped into my mind. So then I started researching near death experiences and how, they can look very different for different people. And what I came to realize is that it wasn't a panic attack after all. It was a near death experience, but I wasn't allowed to go very far, down that path, if you like. It was like I was stopped. And I think that's why I never got past like a black room and I didn't see anybody. So it feels, but it definitely completely changed the course of my life. I just didn't realize that was what initiated the whole process until many years later. So yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, thank you for sharing that because I feel like what you said about what you just said about everybody's experience is different. That's really important
Mm-hmm.
because after all three of my near-death experience were self-inflicted, but regardless of that or whatever happened, it was different each time, and I didn't see the white light. I did not see. Yeah, sure, I seen passed over loved ones that had told me it's not your time yet. Yes, I have
Mm-hmm.
had that, but each
Mm-hmm.
experience was more of like a different experience of like what I needed to see with myself. So yeah, it wasn't, I can't say I felt fear. It was more of like silence and there was just love and it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
a judgment. It was just very silence. It was not, the noise was gone and it was just very
Yeah.
silent, when I was
Yeah.
looking at my body,
Mhm.
so it was like, oh, this is
what it feels, peace feels like. Like, people talk about, oh, do you want peace? It's like, I don't even think that the normal human knows what peace feels like unless you've
Yeah.
had an experience of feeling peace. I don't think anybody really knows what that feels like,
Yeah.
and you're never going to feel it on earth all the time. You're just not.
Yeah.
There's just so much
Yeah.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I also noticed, I think you kind of described it too. It's like the moments, like to me, when I was listening to you speak about like the flashing, it's like all those are all moments, and they're all like moments in the memories that flash. And that's what we focus on. But if we stop
Yeah.
focusing on those things, like what do we have to focus on? So like that's like when you had said that, your experience is going to be different than everybody else's experience. But I have to say that I respect that you said that, because a lot of people, I feel like, that maybe don't even know they had, like you said, like you
Mhm.
had that near death experience. Maybe now listening to this, they're going to be like, oh, wait a second. I do remember something like that happening. And maybe I can look at it from a different perspective, because I think that's really important, especially if you're going through something hard, or you're like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be here anymore. I feel hopeless. That was my
Yeah.
situation. Like, I thought it would be easier if I'm just not on earth. Well, that's not the case. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I was leaving my
Yeah.
child, my 6-month-old child at the time. I was leaving my
Yeah.
family. I was leaving a lot of people that cared about me. And I was just focused on me, and you have to be selfish in the beginning, especially if you're going through
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, whatever. But
Yeah.
also now looking at it, you're like, wait a second. Thank God that didn't happen,
Yeah.
because if it did, what would my life look like? I would have to come
Yeah.
back here to clear that karma. That's how.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good for now.
Yeah. That's right. I'll deal with it now. I'll deal with it in this life.
Right. Yeah. I'm not pushing. I'm not going to be pushing this out any longer.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So you talked about your three you experienced three shared death experiences. So people that don't know what that is, can you kind of explain what that is, and maybe kind of walk us through some of those moments, and how
Yeah,
it shaped your spiritual gifts?
yeah, for sure. So again, it's going to be different for everyone, and the three that I had were all very different. But yeah, they all involved babies who were dying, and all three did die.
Okay.
Um, and one No, all three were quite expected as well, so they weren't complete surprises. Um, but and two of them were with twins, so it was two sets of twins, and then the other one was yeah, a singleton, like a baby on its own. Um, but yeah, so basically a shared death experience. Well, in my experience has been where you witness the death of a human leaving the earth, but it's like you get to peek behind the curtains, behind the veil, and see what's going on from the spirit side. So,
Um,
what I've come to learn is that, because I work a lot with birth as well, being working with babies, is like, when a baby is born onto the earth, there's a death from the spirit realm. And then when babies return to spirit, or any human returns to spirit, there's obviously the death from the human world, but then there's like a birth or a rebirth back into the spirit world. And so, what I was able to witness behind this veil was seeing both at the same time, being able to see the death, the physical death, and also the soul leaving the body from my human perspective, but also seeing the rebirth or the birth of this soul back into spirit. And so they were really powerful and also incredibly joyous, like literally celebrations, which is really hard as a human, witnessing
yeah.
parents, watching their baby die. It was really hard to be able to hold both. Energetically, it was very intense, and emotionally, it was very intense as well. So yeah, and as far as like these three different ones, um, yeah, the first one that I had was actually a green light that I first saw around the mother. I don't tend to see auras normally. I tend to, yeah, feel a lot more and hear things, but visual in other ways, but not necessarily with auras and light and that sort of stuff. But yeah, the first thing I did know that this baby wasn't well. I wasn't actually physically caring. I was just on the shift with that baby that day. And what happened is like I saw this in my mind's eye. I saw this green light come and just completely surround the mother. I've since realized now that it was an archangel that I think possibly Archangel Raphael, that green light, that healing light, and he was there really to support her journey, like the mother's journey, was there much more for her than for the twin, who was born very, very premature. I was twin to twin transfusion syndrome. So one twin was very, very small, the other one was much bigger. And it was the smaller twin that was not expected to survive, which is why they were born early, because she was deteriorating. And yeah, so for that shared death experience, it was witnessing the light around her. And just this feeling is like I felt like the room was crowded, like full of people, but there wasn't many people there. But energetically, it felt like the space that this baby was in, which by this time was on mum's chest, removing the breathing tube, doing all of these things. And it was just this, again, that contrast around the extreme grief and heartbreak of the death of a baby that 2 hours ago was alive inside mum's belly, and the joy of this soul, because I could feel the energy of this child's soul and just this freedom that she felt with no longer being strapped to the earth. And even though she was only here for 2 hours, she had a very challenging time, in that time. So that was the first one I had, and it was also the one that was the most vague, because it was more just light that I was seeing and feeling. Whereas the other two were very visual for me. And the second one was actually when, again, she was a twin, and I had cared for her for many months. I'd had many experiences spiritually with both her and her sister. And the sister went on to get better and go home. And then this one just kept having a lot of issues, one after the other. And when the parents had decided that, and the medical staff had decided that things weren't improving and that it would be best for her to redirect care, as they call it now, I went and spoke to her, because one thing I found working as a nurse in the nursery is the babies aren't spoken to as if they're people. They're spoken about, but not to. And usually when they're spoken to, it's kind of in a gaga type baby voice, which today's babies, it's not necessarily helpful for them all the time, because they understand so much more. So I went and explained to her, just sat by her bed and one night when it was quiet, and just explained to her what was going to happen, and this was the plan. And because she'd said that nobody had told her what was going on, so I ended up speaking with her, I think it was on the Monday night, and they'd planned on the Thursday to redirect care. And I was actually at a women's circle on that day. And it was interesting with the timing. So, being a nurse, whenever I have these experiences, I write them down and I write down the times. And then when I went back to work, I'd check the notes, because the nurse in me likes to show, compare, I guess, what was happening physically and what was happening in my mind. But yeah, it was basically 11 a.m. We'd started this meditation circle. And then again, it's very similar to what happened in the near-death experience. I felt my consciousness split. There was part of me that was sitting there in the meditation room with all these women around me. And then the other part of me was witnessing what was going on. And the hospital, I was on a day off. The hospital was probably 45-minute drive from where I was at the time. And with her, I found and again, it's really hard to describe when you have these experiences. We just don't have the language to describe the experience, but the best way I can describe it is that, I guess more of me was witnessing what was going on at the hospital, even though I could still feel myself in the room, the meditation room, and I felt the heaviness of this baby, because she'd been in the nursery for months, And then suddenly I see myself, me as I was at the time in human form, but also in a much lighter energy. So I don't know if it was my my energy field, my light body, whatever it was. And I saw myself holding her up because it's like the beings couldn't reach her and she couldn't reach them because of the density that she had been through. So I saw myself holding her up, and then I saw angels come through and literally take her body. And it only lasted like sort of a few seconds here and there. It's like I'd have a few seconds and then it would go quiet, and then I'd have a few seconds and then it would go quiet. So yeah, and that was, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but just to to try to keep it concise.
Yeah.
And then when I went back to work a couple of days later, I took my notes, and yeah, it was at 11 o'clock. Things started progressing, and by the time of the last vision, which I think for me was around 1, um, just after lunchtime, yeah, was when they called like the time of death. So basically the different experiences that I had lined up with the different phases of, you know, withdrawing intervention from this baby. Um, and then the third one was with a very tiny prem, also a girl. They've all been with baby girls, who actually came to me the night before. I'd been on days off, so I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was happening. But she came to me and she said, I'm going to die tomorrow, and I want to be outside. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, but how on earth am I going to share that with my colleagues when I rock up at work tomorrow? Um,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this is really weird. And I just thought, you know, okay, I didn't know what I was going to do. I'd been on days off. I didn't know what was happening. But I went to work the next day and found out at handover that, yeah, they were planning to redirect care on this baby, which then made sense. And then I thought, oh God, like she wants to be outside, but I can't say anything around that.
Right.
Um, and she'd told me like a few things about, you know, wanting to be on mum's chest, wanting to be able to, she said she hadn't been able to see the sun. She hadn't been able to feel the fresh air because she'd been in NICU. She was 23 weeks born. So she was tiny and yeah, didn't get to go outside. And she said that's all she wanted to do on her life here. So yeah, so it was about mid-morning, I think, from memory, and I wasn't looking after her, I was looking after another baby. But again, what happened is my consciousness split. Just all of a sudden, I was looking after another baby in normal nurse mode, and suddenly part of me is in the space caring for this other baby, and then this other part of me is somehow in the other side of the nursery where this very sick baby was. And I looked towards that space, and then I saw coming down the corridor as I saw mum on a recliner with the baby on her chest and all hooked up to the wires and everything. And I said, oh, what's happening? And they said, oh, mum said that she wants to do this outside on the balcony.
Wow.
And I was like, I mean, I welled up with tears because I'm like, I'm so glad she was able to get the message through to someone who could honor that for her, because I felt a
Yeah.
lot of guilt around that. But she was able to get that message to her mother, and her mother was able to hear that and understand that.
Right.
So it happened outside, but and again, I was not in the same space because obviously it was outside. But again, I wrote down, I witnessed what happened, and it was similar in that I was peeking behind the veil. I was feeling different levels of the soul leaving. So there was like a heaviness, and then it would get lighter and lighter and lighter. Again, a whole swarm or a flock, I don't know what you call, like a group of angels that came. But with her, there was music. With the others, there wasn't. So it was like, it's a music that I hadn't heard before by an instrument that I don't recognize. Um, but very sweet music, quite high pitched. And it was this huge party, this huge celebration. There was angels there. There were what I assume were her ancestors or her relatives
Right.
coming to welcome her home. But it's like they all came to collect her from the earth and take her wherever they were taking her. But it was a huge celebration. And the one thing I remember about her is she felt so light. She felt so free, so much peace, so much joy, so much freedom, about her being able to be released from her physical body. And she was only about 10 or 12 days old from memory. So she hadn't been here that long, but it had been, again, a very difficult experience for her. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of put all of those experiences into one conversation, but yeah, there were then sort of follow-up experiences as well that happened that sort of helped me to clarify things and continue to communicate with these children after they'd passed as well. Because it was challenging for me, even though these experiences are amazing, I'm still a human at the end of the day and still need to keep on functioning and and doing my job and all of these things. So yeah, so they were my experiences of shared death experiences.
Hey there, I just wanted to take a quick moment to share with all of you spiritual rebels and fempreneurs. If you've been craving a space where you can build wealth, heal trauma, and rise alongside like-minded women, I got something for you to hear about. I'm excited to invite you into the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood. This is a low-cost, high-impact group membership designed exclusively for spiritual fempreneurs who know they need accountability and support to create sustainable wealth, but aren't ready to dive into a one-on-one mentorship. In this membership, you'll get monthly calls, rituals, healing sessions, and workshops to break through your self-doubt and build confidence so that you can consistently sell your offers and make money. This is also a collaborative private Facebook community where you make lifelong connections with other women who are just as serious as hitting their goals. And my personal guidance as your intuitive human design business guide and trauma healer, ensuring you stay aligned and on track with your business goals. Plus, you'll get free access to all my paid workshops and masterclasses, along with exclusive VIP pricing for my one-on-one Voxer membership. This membership is all about helping you heal the sabotaging behaviors blocking your abundance and using your human design to create a business that feels amazing to run. Imagine waking up excited to serve your clients and knowing that you have the exact support you need to hit every single one of your business goals every single month. So if you're ready to rise and build wealth with a sisterhood of spiritual misfits, make sure you click the registration link in the description box. Right now, the investment is just $88 a month, but the price will increase to $197 a month. Join today to unlock exclusive rates and get access to next month's kickoff call. Let's get back to today's episode, but remember, your next level is just one decision away. Join the sisterhood and let's rise together.
Thank you for sharing all of that. My next question was going to be, are you able to still follow up on these souls that had left, like to ask questions and stuff? So I'm glad that you are, for your own clarity, like to be able to talk to them. Because I feel like too, I'm not, when I'm hearing you talk, there's actually more than normal amount of babies leaving, and I don't know if it's because it's not their time or whatever. They're only here for a short time. They're here to teach a certain lesson. They're here to teach grief, guilt, whatever it is, shame, whatever it is, to teach their parents or like what they chose, like the contract. But I have a lot of people that I've seen on social media recently that have lost kids, and I'm listening to you talk and I was like, oh my goodness, you would be perfect to give them closure, to give them clarity. I mean, sure, I'm a medium. I can talk to, crossed over people, but there's not normally many babies that come through, and that's okay. Like, that's just it. Whoever comes through comes through. But for you, it's like that they feel comfortable coming to you. You are the person that come to you. So I'll definitely be connecting you with them, and anybody that has lost like a baby, you need to reach out to her, because I feel like that closure and to understand I understand it's your baby. I get it. I really do. But there is a reason. They're here to teach something, like, just like you said, that she just wanted to feel the sun and be outside. Like, oh my goodness, to give that purpose, you filled that contract. Like, that's it. Now, if you didn't, she's coming back and you're going through the same thing. Like, it's like, that's how simple and easy it is. Like, of, baby souls coming here. I know it's a baby. I get it. Like, but at the same time, it's just like, people that are unfamiliar with like baby communicator, like obviously you did a very good job explaining all of that. But I think a lot of people need closure of like why it happens, because the mom
Yeah.
sits here and blames herself, I feel like. Would you see
Yes.
that in your practice for when?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I probably 50% of the women I work with have experienced some type of loss, and they come to me because they haven't been able to find answers. There wasn't any medical explanation or logical explanation for why things happened, and yeah, they're blaming themselves. They're sitting in guilt, they're sitting in grief, or they're blaming the hospital system, or they're blaming whatever external to them as well as themselves. And so when we can tap into to babies, like they, as you said, they it's very simple in many ways, and that it's very direct. You know, they baby souls, or I think the soul realms in generally, don't have the emotional intensity to situations that we have here on earth. Not to judge ourselves, because we're human and that's part of our experience, but babies, you know, they can say, like, I've worked with women who've had multiple miscarriages, and they say we need time to adjust to the energy of the earth. If we came to the earth the first time and stayed for the next 100 years, that would be way too much for us, and it would be too challenging for our journey here on earth. It would just be jarring. It would be like basically 100 years of suffering just trying to get used to it. So they're like, no, we're going to come, you know, and some of them come like 8, 10 times. And each time they say, it helps me to attune to the earth's energy. It helps me to adjust to the earth's energy. And I liken it to, you know, going somewhere for a holiday. You know, generally we won't move overseas for like permanently without going to visit the place first. Is the
Right.
same as here on earth, right? You know, especially today's souls than today's children, who have a very different frequency and vibration than souls 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago. They need that time to attune and adjust to the earth's frequency before they commit. So from their perspective, it's super simple, super straightforward. But for us humans here that have to like live through that and go through those 8 to 10 miscarriages, it's brutal. Like it's so challenging. But then, as you said before, you know, they are here to teach us and to guide us into the parents that we need to be to bring them earthside as well. And that starts, in my experience, well before, often even before conception as well. So it's again, it's a bit of a juggling act, because yeah, we need to honor the human experience, but this soul perspective can really help to lighten the load and soften the edges of some of these really brutal experiences.
Yeah.
So
I can appreciate that you had said that. I feel like for this new, if it's a newer soul, like you're the baby souls that you're talking about, I feel like yes, it's hard right now for them to come and stay because it's
yeah.
so chaotic and it's so dense. I've noticed most of the people probably from like 20, I want to say 2020 to most of the people. They're not people. I mean, they're people, but they're babies. they're
Yeah, yeah.
9-year-olds at this point right now. So,
Yeah.
but they're all older souls. I've all of my daughter, she's 5. She's an old soul. She's probably older than I am, and I feel like
Yeah.
all of my kids, like my friends' kids, they're all old souls. Like, so it's like
Yeah.
they aren't new souls coming here. But I think with this new wave and the new frequency that you're talking about, I think that the newer souls are trying to come in, but they
Yeah.
vibrate such a high frequency that the density either makes them sick, or they have autism, or they have some type of other, genetic issue or whatever, and I think that that is definitely just to prove that earth is so dense, and it's
Yeah.
to live here. It's just hard for all of us to live here. Sometimes I'm like, why do I keep coming back here?
I know, right? I know.
But why do
Yeah.
I like it so much? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I
Yeah.
sometimes ask myself, like, what? I'm
Yeah.
done doing lessons for a couple of years, like, what in the heck?
I know, right? I know, right? And that's for, yeah, those of us who have been to Earth many times before, even though we kind of know the drill, it's
Yeah.
still really intense for us here. And there's still a lot for us to learn. Whereas, like, I'm connecting and communicating with souls who have never been to Earth before. They're, many of them are still old souls, but they're not old Earth souls. And that to me is a really big difference, because it's like, where has the soul gained its wisdom and its experience? it was a frequent flyer to Earth, then yeah, it's going to be, even though the world is much different now, they're going to know the drill, you know, at least on some level. But if you have babies that have, or souls that have gained their wisdom and experience from other planets, other dimensions, I don't even know most of where they go. I've had glimpses, but there's so many other places for a soul to have experiences, right? And so if they're coming from that and they're coming to somewhere that they've never been before, then yeah, there's going to be issues, not just with the conception energy, but with the birthing energy, with growing up, with just the process of adjusting to being a human or a soul attached to a human earth body, that they've never had that experience before. And that's where we're seeing, yeah, a lot of the really what is described as kind of like difficult. I don't like to label children, but you know, by society's ways, it's like these kids that society doesn't know how to deal with or work with um, or support. But that's part of what they're teaching us as well. To, you know, like the old ways don't work. There's plenty more of us new kids on the block coming to town, so we need to step up and have new ways of supporting and also understanding these kids and these souls that are incredibly wise, incredibly intelligent, but it's not of an earthly origin, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some things that my daughter says to me that I don't really know what she's talking about. Like it makes sense. Like we'll be outside, and it was a couple years ago when I was just recording her thinking she was so cute, like of what she was talking. Well, I didn't realize after I listened to, because I mean, I can channel light language, but after I listened to it on recording on my Instagram, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm laughing at her. Like, what are you talking about? Well, she's channeling light language, and she was trying to tell me it was like the next day I had this huge conference, like this huge masterclass that I was like really like kind of nervous about, but I didn't tell her about it, you know? And she just kept, and I remembered listening to this, and she just kept telling me, like, remember who you are. You remember who you are. And it was like this whole channel thing. And I like just started tearing up because I was like, oh my gosh. So I started that moment. I started to listen to her more because
Yeah.
even now she's 5. And I remember I didn't have a doula because I have usually like rough pregnant, like her pregnancy was very rough. I had to be on blood thinners. I had a history of blood clots, blood disorder, all this stuff, you know. So I was always very monitored by medical. And I wish I always could have a water birth, but they won't let me because they have to monitor me. I have to be off blood thinners, like all this stuff, like just too much. It's unnecessary stuff. But I know that they just want to keep me safe. And a couple of years ago, I remember her saying to me, I had a rough delivery. And I was thinking, you had a rough delivery? Like she just randomly said, I had a rough delivery to me, just randomly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're in the car. And I was like, what is she? I'm thinking she's thinking about like an Amazon, like what's going to happen? Like, and I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't think anything of it. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, she's talking about her delivery. Like she must remember when she came here. And so I just said, do you remember when you came here? And she said, yes. And then I also said, do you remember being in mommy's belly? And she said, yes. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it's just sometimes to say it out loud. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to believe her. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll ask her something and she'll say yes and she really means no, you know, like that type of thing. But I'm just like, maybe she does remember. I know I remember.
Yeah.
Born. I remember all of that. I feel like now that I got through so much trauma and all of the stuff that I've been through, I remember being in my mom's belly. I remember my mom giving birth. I remember, and it was dramatic. Like it's kind of like thinking about it. No wonder people don't remember. Like that will mess you up. But yeah. So I was going to say, you know, you being able to communicate with those babies, like it is. That's why most babies sleep for like a couple days, you know, after. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. It's a rough landing. They kind of like crash land on the planet, really.
and a totally different frequency, like totally different. You're like high vibe to like I feel like I'm being suffocated. I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Taking their first breath in a different oxygen versus whatever our souls don't need oxygen. So it's like whatever else they were breathing or able to stay alive. Like that is huge. I mean, I can't even put into words how it would feel, but definitely 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, just like look, if you're gonna like look back as like working at a NICU nurse and how now that you do baby soul communicator, what is something that you've seen like a thread that has connected all and your soul mission in life?
Oh, I think it's there's so many things that I could say. The first thing, or there's two like that are coming to mind. One is um well, I'll say this for me, it's been one of my big lessons is like stop trying to make the unknown known, or stop trying to make the uncertain certain. Um, and this goes for all areas of life, but working a lot with women who are trying to conceive, and there's this era of instant gratification, and we know straight away because we can just Google it and things like that. Whereas today's babies and today's souls thrive in the unknown. That's where creation happens. That's where the magic happens, is in the unknown. And one of the other thing that I felt to mention is like with today's children, especially those who are coming to Earth, is they want to be welcomed, they want to be invited, they want to be um, called to the earth to be given an opportunity to have a life here. They don't want to be grasped at, they don't want to be pulled at, they don't want to be pulled from the ethers and saying, I'm ready now, you must come now, why aren't you here yet? And I don't say that as a judgment. I say that as like from the perception of today's children, because they, like all of us, we chose to come to the earth, even though we may question that at times, but we all made that decision to come. And we all came in with, as you mentioned earlier, around things to do, karma to work through, healing to be done, patterns to unravel, like all of these things, whether it's on an individual level or a collective level or both. And it's really important. Like babies always say to me, like the common thread is that we want to be seen as the wise, mature souls that we are, and to be recognized for that, and to be acknowledged for that, and to, yes, they crash land here on the earth, and we need to teach them how to be little humans, but these souls, especially these higher vibe ones, they're going to be teaching us a whole lot more than what we will ever be able to teach them. And that's something that they'll say over and over again, not from a place of ego, but just from a real, like, it's like they're saying it's time, planet Earth, to shift your beliefs and your thoughts and your actions and your behaviors around these kids, around children, and how they're seen and heard and treated. So, and they just want to be seen as that, as autonomous beings who have planned their own journey here that goes well beyond their family of origin. All of us, we've planned our lives here, and it's like our family of origin is just like a piece of that puzzle, but our whole puzzle is so much bigger than that. And that's what they're wanting us to recognize and acknowledge, and to nurture that as well, not to dismiss our own desire to have a family or expand our family, but yeah, just looking through their eyes, or trying to be in their shoes a little bit more as a soul, making that choice to come to the earth, whether that's for just to feel the breeze on the face and the sun on their face, like that little pram I told you about, or whether it's to be here for 100 years. So yeah, I know that was like more than like one common thread, but yeah, it's so
No, that's okay.
multidimensional. It's hard to like just say one thing, but it's been definitely been like a huge journey for me, and completely changed my beliefs around life and death and babies and children, and my own journey and everything in between. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can resonate with when you said that babies, like everything that the baby souls are saying, because I know that my daughter is so much more wiser than I am. I'm just pretty much here to teach her, how to be a little human. And then she pretty much, her soul knows pretty much the rest. I mean, even
Yeah.
I can see it now. She's 5 and she acts like a teenager. And sometimes
Yeah.
my husband will be now like my husband is pretty much the one that has raised her. obviously they have a contract together. So like, but she still sees her biological dad. So it's just interesting that she still even like looks at both of them as her dad. And it's like that she decided to call him dad. I didn't say, call, any of that. It's just so interesting to just watch her make her own choices. She doesn't be able to make her own choices. She's very angry. I'm still working on that. I'm like, you're not going to get everything you want in life. Like, I'll teach you that. But I do know that she teaches me more about myself than I think I could ever teach her. I don't think I ever really know that. Maybe I could tell her that, but I don't think she necessarily will ever know that. I know that I teach her a lot, and I kept her open to like, you can have your own beliefs. You can believe whatever you want to believe, like, I'm just going to help you believe what I know. I don't know everything, all this stuff. So it's like, definitely, I feel like I at least fulfilled that purpose, even though sometimes you don't feel like a good mom, but it's just like, I think this is the best thing, just to keep her safe and guided in some path. I feel like that is, I feel like I'm not going to say, I don't think any of us moms have mastered any of that, but I feel like, if her soul was not happy, I think I probably would know.
That's it. And we need to remember that these children, she chose you to be her mother and to bring her into the world, and and everything that would involve. We forget that as babies, they hang around us for years, possibly decades before they come, and so they know what they're coming into. Like, they know us, I think, better than we know ourselves in many ways, especially when we're still in spirit. So it's like, I'm hoping that helps to like take some of that pressure and that guilt off as well, because it's like, no, they knew you before they came. And so they know, to some degree. They don't know everything and how everything's going to pan out, but they're going to have a fair idea of the trajectory of their journey with the parents that they choose. There's not a lot that's unexpected, especially the big things. Little things day to day, they're figuring that out as they go. But the big things, whether it's around relationships or parents or relationship breakdowns, and having step parents and all these things, like they know that before they come. It's just how it's going to unfold is their experience. So
I was going to say, for my daughter, she was the reason why I left my abusive relationship. So it's like and to be honest, I don't know if I would have left if I didn't have her, So it's like, she helped me for the longest time. I did it for her until I started to work on myself. Then I started doing it for me. And then it's for me, and for her too. But it's like at the same time. And I think a lot of people are going through that right now. So it's like, there's so many babies coming here because most of the times, more than not, a actual child, another baby, it's like, I'm not doing this. I will not raise a child like this. I feel like that empowers men, women, whoever. If it's a man that's being abusive or being abused by a woman, goes both, leaving a relationship just so they can heal and for their kid, because then that pattern continues, and it's like that generational pattern continues. And I feel like I was here to break that, and I needed to break it. It's like Lily had helped, with that. So I definitely believe that she knew what she was getting into. I tell her that all the time. I'm like, you knew you were coming here. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, she just says random stuff, too. But she always says my head. This is her new thing lately. She's like, my head is very powerful. I know what you're thinking. I'm like, oh God. Where are you getting this stuff from? I'm like, oh my God. Don't tell normal people that, because they're going to think you're crazy. You're 5. They're going to be like, wait a second. What's your mom telling you? Like, oh God. We're going to be evaluated soon.
Oh, no.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with somebody that you feel that will gain knowledge from listening. And make sure you check out, if you're watching this over on YouTube, make sure you check out all of Lauren's links in the description box, and connect with her on social media, and reach out to her if you want to have a session. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you are a current or inspiring to be fempreneur, suffering from the fear of being seen and or feel very triggered when you're building your business, reach out to me at The Mermaid Light about my Rich and Resilient Biz Baddies. This is a collective text message Voxer support group designed to help you heal your triggers and turn imposter syndrome into bad bitch energy. If you resonate with our conversations and insight, don't forget to subscribe, rate the show, and leave a review. Your feedback fuels our mission. Remember, your journey to unwavering certainty and purpose is ongoing. So please make sure you stay connected with us on social media. Keep manifesting greatness in your life. Until next time, this is Lauren from the Enlightened Misfits podcast. Stay enlightened, stay inspired, and keep manifesting your extraordinary path.